Hey, so my name is Lisa Callahan, and I am the founder here of the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group on Facebook. I also run an amazing program called Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, which is where I help women identify their invisible emotional relationship with food through a journey of self-discovery. So we're going to discover some things together today, and we want to be talking about food itself. Because so many of us in this group feel that food is the enemy. And I want to teach you today why food is absolutely not the enemy. And I want to help you be able to stop making excuses for food being the enemy, because if we keep thinking that food is the problem, we're never going to get to the truth. And if we never get to the truth, then we're just going to keep going round and round and round on a vicious cycle. Now, if you're anything like me, you've been on this vicious cycle for decades. And for me, it was about at least 3 to 4 decades even. It was 30 years before I really started to recognize that food was what I was struggling with. But I was always thinking it was about the food, and that's why I went on a bunch of diets. However, what I came to recognize that it wasn't about the food at all, that it was actually about the things that I thought about myself, the ways that my mind was kept into a narrow, locked mindset, thinking that things had to be one way or the other, thinking that I had to be perfect in every which way, thinking that I could never ask for help myself, and that the only thing that I was good for was to help other people because I was such a good person, while I was destroying myself from the inside out. So we want to be able to get to the bottom of this topic today, because if we don't, we're just going to keep going round and round. We'll always keep making food the problem. We'll always blame food. Food is the enemy, and we will never be able to push aside that to get to ourselves. And the truth is, if we're doing that, that means that somehow or another, food has become more important than us. And that's not okay. So let's go ahead and look at this from the opposite angle. So if food, when we think that food is the enemy, why do we think that? So a couple of reasons are, well, because food makes us fat. Food makes us feel bad about ourselves. Food makes us uncomfortable. Food is addicting. Food makes us feel like we're irresponsible. Food is a big pain in the you-know-what, like we have to cook it, we have to go buy it, we have to shop for it. Food is expensive. So think of different ways that you talk about food in a negative way. See if you guys can drop me some comments here. Let me know what it is that you struggle with when you think about food, right? How many times do you come up with these reasons in your mind to where food is the problem of your life, right? Or then we kind of flip a switch and we say, well, food makes me feel comfortable. Food makes me feel good from the inside, like it gives me that momentary pleasure. So food is my friend, you know? We talk about food like it's an actual entity, like it's a thing, and it's something that is luring us or drawing us, or a big pain in the neck, or something that's giving us pain for ourselves, whatever we feel about ourselves. But really, food is just something that keeps us alive. And if we're thinking about actual food, real food, like we need it to nourish our bodies, our insides, our organs, our heart, our muscles. Like it's the only way that we have the ability to get energy inside of our bodies. And I know I'm not telling you anything that you don't know already, right? We've all been through Nutrition 101. Like it's impossible with the way that the world is now to not get good nutrition. Like it's impossible. We have the internet. You're watching me live, so I know that you have internet. So you could look up a bazillion things online to tell you about what proteins to eat, what fats to eat, what carbohydrates to eat, what to stay away from, eating, making sure you don't have too many potatoes, making sure you're just eating vegetables and meats and such. So we have so much information about food that it's incredible. The thing that we don't really think about is the other stuff, the non-food, the things that we're not overeating, like salad and chicken and apples and whatever. We're not overeating that stuff. That's food. Do you know why you're not overeating that? It's very interesting if you want to really know. You're not overeating that stuff because that stuff is actual food, and you cannot overeat food. And the reason why you cannot overeat food is because you're a human being. And so your human being has little senses inside. We'll call them human spidey senses. And your human senses know when you've eaten enough food, because the food will make you full. You won't be able to overeat it. Consequently, the flip side of that, the non-food, the stuff in the packages, the box, the bags, the stuff that's got like a bazillion ingredients, the stuff that's like, I don't even want to know what's in this, because if you started to read the ingredients, you wouldn't be able to tell what you were eating, right? Like you wouldn't be able to like see that item on a shelf itself. It's just got to be like ingredients in the box or the bag. Well, those things are made in a lab. Because they're made in a lab, they're made scientifically to make certain that you love the way that stuff tastes. So there's something that's in the actual like product itself. We can't even call it food because it's not food. It's not food. However, I know that those are the things that you want for comfort. Those are the things that are calling your name. Those are the things that are the enemy. So let's be real when we're talking about what it is that we're like labeling food as, because food is not the enemy. So now we can actually separate that and we can say, okay, food's not the enemy. So actually this non-food, that's kind of what I need to look at here. So if we can just like separate that for a minute and be able to see the food side, we'll be able to understand that it's not food. Like you're blaming poor food. Are you gonna really blame like an apple and like lettuce and chicken and like real food, you know? Rice and potatoes, things that came from the ground, things that were swimming around once. I know some people are vegetarians or whatever. I don't talk too much about nutrition here in this particular group. However, there is something to be said for when we like label like a whole dozen donuts and we're like, oh, food is the enemy. That's not really real. That's not possible because a donut's not a food. It can't be. It's not like grown or made, right? So we want to be able to like separate those two things. So now that we know that we're not really talking about food, we're going to stop saying that food is the enemy. If you want, you can say that non-food has some certain effects on you, but please don't say food because it's just not true. So let's start with that and recognize that that food itself is not poisonous. And yes, certain bodies chemically can have different aversions to certain things, dairy and whatever, nuts and certain types of sauces, meats, whatever, I don't know. I know that for me, I did have some aversions to like milk, let's say, for some numbers of years of my life. Certain times I couldn't eat nuts. Certain times I couldn't eat any caffeine, like caffeine affected my body. And the funny thing is that that's actually something that when your body's giving you a sign and a symptom of something that's making certain that you know that there's a problem going on, that's actually time to really look and investigate and see like, wow, so what foods are not working well with my system right now? Like right now, honestly, caffeine's not working well for me. I tend to be having like a sleep apnea. Like if I was drinking caffeine, just 1 cup of coffee a day, I seem to be waking up in the night like kind of like with a gasp. And so I started to think about it. I'm like, well, what do I have in my diet that could be causing that reaction, that response? And so I started to think about it, and I was like, I never really drank coffee before. But then we got a coffee maker in the house, and I have a partner, and he started making coffee, and it smelled so good. And I was like, I'll just try like a half a cup, which turned into 1 cup, and that was really it. But then, like over a 6-month period of time, it must have like accumulated in my system. I started getting this like sleeping thing, and I was like, what the heck is that? So I started to like think about my food that I was eating and like what was going into my body and what kind of chemistry might have been responding to my system. Well, I cut out the coffee. Now I drink a decaf because I do like it. And lo and behold, the problem was solved. See, your body is a machine. It's a perfectly working machine. Because you're feeding that machine certain chemicals that are not responding well to your human body, that could be a problem. So we want to make sure that when we're talking about this subject, we're not talking about food being the enemy. So think about that. Food is not the enemy. Food is not poisonous. Your body will let you know if there's something in the foods that you're eating that is causing you a response. Now, if you're eating a bunch of non-foods, you're going to have to change something around that so that you can see what it is that you're doing that's causing the response in your body. Now, keep in mind, weight is an underlying symptom of a problem. So if all of those non-foods are putting weight on your body, well, that makes sense, right? They're giving you a symptom. They're telling you that there's something wrong. So let's just start there. That's like a logical explanation as to why I do not want you calling food the enemy ever again. It's not true. The second thing is that food is not a measure of yourself as a human being. It is not going to change who you are as a human being if you decide to eat a cookie versus eating an apple. Like, at your core, the beliefs that you have about yourself, they are in you. And you're the only one that knows what it is that you feel about yourself. And so if you already feel a little bit bad about yourself because of some things that have happened in the past, places where you're stuck in guilt, places where you're stuck in shame, blame, regret, anger, could be anything. But if you're stuck there to begin with, and then you're now going to use a cookie and then be like, oh, I feel so bad about myself. That darn cookie was calling my name. It's the cookie's fault, right? It's the cookie's fault that I feel like garbage about myself already. And that way I'm going to eat 20 cookies to continue to feel bad about myself. I did that. That was what my binging was about. Really, it's like every time that I tried to get out of my own way, and I tried to do something really amazing that I could be proud of myself for, I don't know. Just all of a sudden I would like trip down the sidewalk hall. I'd end up in the store. I'd end up buying that entire box of cookies. For me, like, cookies was my thing. It really was. Like, for the most part, that was a lot of my binging. Anything sweet, like anything sweet. I know other people struggle with chips or struggle with like heavy foods or meats or something that's, you know, a little bit different. For me, it was just the sugar, and I could not get enough of it. And once I was out of the box, like, you know, it was like a caged animal. I couldn't stop, sometimes for days, and I would go out of my way, like literally, like leave my house, go to a Dairy Queen or bring home ice cream or something, and then like that was my job for the day. Was that I was gonna finish that. It was like, I can't have this tomorrow because I know that tomorrow I'm gonna have to get back on track. So I used the food to make me feel like a horrible person. Like, that's what I used it for. And so that's not true, because I am not a horrible person, neither are you. And the things that I was linking food to, like, I was blaming the food. I was like, okay, this food now is making me horrible, and so I have to stay away from the food so that I can be a good person. That was crap. It didn't make sense. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel right, and it wasn't true. The third thing that we're gonna bust food, is that food is not a measure of your strength. So many times we'll say like, oh, such and such cookies are my weakness, or like, I can't trust myself. Like, I'm too weak to have that stuff in the house. Like, I know that if I have this stuff in the house, I'm just gonna go right to it, and there's nothing that I can do about it. So we're making the food like tell a story about how trustworthy we are and how strong we are as human beings. And that's not okay, because trust me when I say you have been through many, many, many hard things as a human being, and you have made it through those things. And it had nothing to do with food. And the food is not making you weak. You're already a strong person. You have been through a lot, and this food is not causing you to be weak. Period. End of story. So when we think about weakness, this is a myth that, because we feel like if we put the food in the house, like if we're like, okay, well, I can't trust myself, so I just have to keep all the sweets out of the house. I don't know about you, but for me, like I was on lockdown in my house here, like on lockdown. And trust me when I say, there was times that I did like the really, like I went out of the box to figure out how to get something sweet when I had nothing in the house. So like I would take like handfuls of honey. I might be known to make a sugar sandwich. So maybe I would take like bread that my kids had for sandwiches for their lunch, and maybe I just have been known to pour a little sugar on that and eat it. Who knows? What I'm saying is that I didn't have a lot of like stuff in the house because I could not trust myself. I felt like I was going to be putting myself in a very vulnerable place if I had the food in the house. I felt like that vulnerability made me weak. And so this is a myth about vulnerability, where like now I can keep stuff in the house. My son likes chocolate chip pancakes, so I have pancake mix. I have this, I don't know what good, from Trader Joe's, like a decent pancake mix that he likes. And I keep a bag like seriously this size from Costco because he likes chocolate chips in his pancakes and they're expensive. So I just buy like, I don't know, it's like a $10 bag, and I keep it in the freezer, and he'll just go in and take a few handfuls, like a sprinkle full, put it in his pancakes, and he'll make that like once or twice a week. But that bag literally it's months it'll be there. Now, every once in a while, I'll decide that I want a handful of chocolate chips, and that's okay. It's just that it's not sitting there calling my name all day anymore. Whereas before, I felt like I could not trust myself. I felt like that bag in the house would make me weak. And that was just not true. So this is a little quote on vulnerability. It's a myth. It's a myth that vulnerability is weakness. So that's not true, because vulnerability is the core of all feelings and emotions. To believe that vulnerability is weakness is also to believe that feeling anything at all is weakness. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, joy, hope, and creativity. And so it's interesting because I felt like I couldn't trust myself. And I felt like the food was there to prove to me that I couldn't trust myself. That's just not true. That quote, by the way, was from Brene Brown, who's amazing. If you haven't ever looked her up, look her up. And look up her talk on shame and vulnerability, and I can't remember what else, but it's shame and vulnerability. Brene Brown, BRENE BROWN. Food is not a measure of how loving you are. Sometimes we will think that we'll get in a bad mood, or we'll be hangry, or we're not going to be able to like give our best self if we're also like struggling with this feeling about ourselves that comes from food. So food has nothing to do with how loving we are, and especially with how much we love ourselves. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll take that blame and we'll be like, I turn into a big bitch if I haven't had my sugar, if I haven't had my coffee, if I haven't had my donuts for breakfast, whatever. Like, we literally give food that power to dictate who we are and how we're going to show up in the world. And we tell ourselves and others that like, oh, I'm not good unless I have my sugar. I'm not good unless I have my ice cream. I'm not good unless I have my coffee. It's just not true. It's not. It doesn't change who you are as a human being. And I really, really have to make certain that you know this, so that way we can push the food aside. You might enjoy your coffee. You might enjoy your ice cream, your sugar. That's okay. It's just that I want you to stop associating who you are as a person with what the food feels like it gives you, because that's what we have to bust here. Those are the myths. Let's see, I think I have one or two more. Let's see. Food is not a proper way to forget about a bad day. So I also want you to start to recognize that there really is no such thing as a good day or a bad day. Yes, there are things that happen throughout our day, and those things are meant to serve as a message to help you to be able to navigate through your life and be able to respond to yourself in the most loving, kind-hearted way possible. If you spill milk in the morning on your floor or whatever, and then you take that energy with you, now you move it throughout your day, and you're like, ugh, or I didn't get my coffee this morning, or I didn't get my so-and-so ate the last brownie, and now I've had a bad day. And we literally will take that food and we'll turn it into something like so much more than it is. And if you're doing that, you're gonna want to change your frame of mind, because it's going to be more important for you to see how you're responding to yourself. And when you're responding to yourself in a way that doesn't feel good, you're going to see how your energy moves through you and out of you and into others. And then that ricochets back into you, because now you feel bad about yourself because you weren't nice to somebody, because you bit someone's head off. And then you're thinking like, why did I do that, right? And then it's like the food becomes like a double-edged sword, because in one part you may have like gotten into that bad mood because you thought you didn't have your fix, and then the other hand comes in and it's like, well, now I need the fix again to calm me down and to comfort me, but yet that's how you got into the mess to begin with. So it literally helps you to separate from yourself and from your own identity. And when I say helps you, I know that sounds like a contradiction, but that's what it's doing. It's helping you, the food. If you're looking at it as a blame, if you're looking at it in this way, you're using it to help you disconnect from yourself and from the world. Like, you're using it to disconnect you from the world. And yet, even though sometimes we feel like that's what we want, that's not true. You do not want to disconnect. You actually want to be accepted. You want love and belonging. So we can't have it both ways. We have to be able to associate our own self with how we feel and how we're continuing to keep ourselves stuck, and how we're pointing the finger at food and making it the food's fault. It's not true, and it's not okay. And you have to stop doing that so that you can get to the next level of awareness. Because right now, if you're in this level of awareness, you're just going to stay in the vicious cycle. So let's go ahead and go into the next part of this training, which is how to break away from this. Step one, you must be interested in yourself, right? If we're using food and we're saying that the food's the enemy, then that's taking the spotlight off you, my friend. And you can't do that. You must be interested in yourself. That's step one. Step two is you must believe that you're worth the effort. Because let's face it, there is a chemical draw to those non-foods. The reason why I know that is because there's a guy, he's probably, eating the chips also, just so you know, but he's in a lab coat, and he's really smart, and he's like literally putting specific little drops of this concoction that he's made into your Doritos. And the reason why they taste so good is because there's something called mouth feel that he measures, and they have volunteers who come in, people who are giving surveys on what the food tastes like, how the crunchiness, how the consistency is, what is the cheesiness, what's the saltiness, what's the sweetness. Like, there's all kinds of studies that are done to make these things fire in your brain and make them the perfect feel for your mouth, the perfect taste, the perfect sensation. They're doing that on purpose. If you can manage to get away from that stuff, you're gonna find that an apple that maybe doesn't even taste that great anymore, like it used to when you were a kid, but it doesn't taste that way anymore, you're gonna find that your taste will start to be able to come back to your human body, and that the food will be amazing. You'll be able to see it in a different way when you stop looking at all the packages and the colors, the red, the green, the whatever. You're going to be able to look at like a red pepper and a green pepper and a yellow pepper and a tomato and cabbage and spinach and like purple cabbage and an eggplant, and like you're going to see it with a different mindset, different eyes. Right now, the eyes are kind of clouded over with thinking that this food is so like mesmerizing and it's wonderful and we're drawn to it, right? And it's the enemy, yes, but at the same time, you're supporting that enemy. So that doesn't work. So you have to believe that you're worth it, because it is going to be a little bit of a process to move from that and to pull back the curtain on this, which is what we want to see. Right now, our vision is very narrow. We have to widen the lens so that we can see a little bit more of the picture. Step 3, you must like yourself and love yourself enough to give yourself the attention that you will need to make the changes that you say you want to make. So this is where support comes in, and I have a little link here that is schedule a 15-minute chat with me. It's very important to see if you're ready for this process. Self-discovery is where you have to be interested in yourself enough to want to make changes, to want to learn new things about yourself. How will you know? How will you know if you like yourself if you can't even like take 5 minutes to like, or 15 minutes actually, we're going to do a 15-minute call, 15 minutes to ask some questions about yourself and really be able to say like, hey, I am worth this time. This is good. Step 4, you must learn to talk nicely to yourself. Be kind and compassionate, supportive and forgiving to yourself, even if you make a mistake. Because as you move through this journey, there's going to be times when you're going to feel like, I just can't do it. I don't know what I'm doing. And you're going to feel like you made mistakes. When you're supported, when you're supporting yourself and you're moving through this part of your process, this is your learning, right? You've come to this place for a reason. You're in this position for a reason. Now we got to figure out why. You must be willing to apply energy to yourself. You must believe that you deserve joy and happiness, love and connection. You must believe that you're courageous and fight through the negative self-talk when you feel like giving up. And you must treat yourself like a friend at all times and do everything in your power to focus on yourself so that you can follow through with the things that you say you want to do. So this is the game plan. These are the goals that I would like you to have, so that way you can stop using food as the enemy. Food is not the enemy. If you can't do these things that I just read on the list for yourself, then you're the enemy. For you. You're the enemy for you. And you're using food as a blame. And that's not okay. So, all right, this was a bit of tough love today. You know I love you all. I have to be firm sometimes because we have to be able to get out of our own way. I was in my own way for years, and I am not in my own way anymore. When I feel negative or I feel like I'm grumpy or cranky or anything doesn't feel correct in my mind, I will take a pause. I will make sure I get to sleep on time. I will make sure I'm drinking my water. I will make sure I read. I just downloaded a new book today because I was feeling a little off base. And I said, you know what? Time to fill my soul. Time to fill my spirit. Time to reconnect with myself and make certain that I'm taking care of me. Because if I'm not taking care of me, I'm definitely not going to be taking care of my clients. And I have a really nice community that we work with in Crush That Food Thing self-discovery system, and I want to be able to give them the best of me. So I have to be able to see when I'm using a blame of something that's causing me to not feel good about myself. And if that's what you're doing with food, then it's time to book a call. All right, I will see you all next time. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, my name is Lisa Callahan, and I will see you on the next training. Bye now.